Welcome to Chew on This, where we practice theology as a community in the reality of our messy lives. This discussion comes from our Maranatha Forest Lake Wednesday Night Church, the pastoral preaching notes, and the live large group discussion these notes prompted, something we like to call a community-based learning experience. Pastor Orlean, your host, has been ministering as part of Maranatha since the inception of the church almost 45 years ago. She loves studying God's Word, sharing what she has learned, and encouraging all to chew on this with Jesus and others. Along with her passion for Jesus and solid theology, she loves spending time with family, hiking in the woods, and taking curious and peculiar pictures. So come on, chew on this with us.
I would like for you to get to know my friend Paul just a little bit better. I am the introducer. This is Pastor Orlean Hasseltine, along with Pastor Robin Bjornson and Pastor Michelle Ingram, with our wonderful producer Jim McGannon. All of us thank you once again for joining us this Tuesday for the second half of our discussion on Chew on This. The first half of this enlightening, edifying, and extremely interesting discussion was broadcast on Monday and is available at yourliferadio.com. Look for the Chew on This icon. Today, we're going to continue our conversation born from our Wednesday Night Church winter series, Letters from Prison. We are on episode 1, the second half, Meeting Paul. In Monday's show, we talked about Paul's conversion and his physical appearance, giving us foundational things to help us understand as we read his letters, understanding where they come from. And I really highly encourage you to go hear and listen to that, because I found information, me and my unbelievable, voracious reading design, information I've never heard before, or confirming things that I thought, oh, okay, that's right. I thought he looked like that, or that was part of his personality. But giving it an idea of all that was put into him, to the person we meet who's writing these letters, understanding that individual and why that's there. So looking at his background, we're going to take a little bit of understanding, because your background and how you grow up really does form you. It doesn't make you who you are, but it really does form you. So we see once again back in Acts 7:58 and Acts 8:1 that he was a young man in authority. He was somewhere around between the ages of 18 and 30 when Stephen was martyred, and Saul gave his thumbs up, and he approved of this killing, because this man was persecuting the truth in Paul's eyes, and he needed to be removed because he was changing the history of the Jewish teaching. Can't call it Christianity. You can tell I don't talk in these two sectors completely, that they're always meshed together in my world. That Paul is making that separation, that this is not this, so don't do that. And a different time and a different place, but done with human passion. And he is very young for a person who is able to be the one in authority standing there, and the individuals lay their coats at his feet so they can go participate in the stoning of this heretic named Stephen, who they thought was. And Saul is standing there approving of that. And that being noted in that instance is saying he's a man of authority. They listened to him. They respected him. And in their mind, he was a man of truth. And he was very young for somebody who was doing that. So how did he get to be that person? What produced this 18 to 30-year-old to have that kind of authority? What was in all the part of his background? Well, one of the things that was really influential is where he was born. He was born in this metropolis of a city called Tarsus, and it's significant in the region of Cilicia. I think I got it right. Tarsus, it has a rather long history, but it was founded somewhere in the late 3rd or early 2nd millennium BC, and it was saved by Alexander the Great. So there had to be something there that Alexander the Great, they didn't want it destroyed when the Persians left in 333 BC. So that isn't too much earlier. It's getting closer to the time of Christ. So the city is there, and it's growing. It's been protected. It is seen as a place to take over. It's seen as strategic. So there is military presence. So that means there's strong government presence. And if there's lots of Walmarts, because Walmarts follow wherever there's a military. I've heard that, because it's cheap and it's easy to get things, because you're living such a mobile life when you're in the military. So they had to have their rendition of that type of society to be able to feed, take care of that that type of community. So those types of things that were part of that lifestyle were growing in the city. And when Rome took over, it gave it this, it's really weird. So I have to ask myself, and now I am intrigued and want to read more on what ancient Tarsus was like, because the Romans gave it political self-rule. Why would they do that? Were they so conjoined at the hip that it wasn't a problem? Because they're not going to put in danger any of their authority. But there's something going on here that they seen this as a benefit, that this would benefit them. Because if it didn't benefit them, there wasn't any way they were going to do it. Because it already had established itself as this important cultural center, and this just made it grow even faster. The population, don't look at your notes, the population at the time of Paul's birth was somewhere around what? Anybody remember?
I remember from last night.
I remember from last night, so
but
yes,
yeah. That's a lot of people, 500,000 people.
500,000 people.
I mean, because you think back then there were not as many people.
Well, that's what we like to think.
That's a crazy number for a city back at that time.
Yes.
That's what
right.
The numbers being thrown out when it was just asked, we had 5,000 and 100,000.
Yes.
And 100,000, you could tell they thought they were stretching it.
Yes.
No, that's where I would go, you know.
Yeah.
Because, Earth is not quite as populated as it is now. And yes, there's more of an agrarian society, but it was quite the city. But it wasn't the largest city. So it was kind of not New York, not California. It was somewhere in between that, under those, bigger cities. And it was a university town. And their universities were well respected, not like the cities of Alexandria and Athens as centers of learning, but it was right up. It was the feeder system. It was part of that respected leadership and training. So Paul grew up in a place where education was held at the top. If you could get it, you better have it. It was respected. It was offered. You were treated differently if you were educated. You were definitely treated differently. So he grew up. He is not a Roman descent. He's not Greek at all. He's not he doesn't have a Jewish parent and a Roman parent. No, he is all Jewish. He's a Hebrew, and he grew up in the city, and so he then had access to their educational system. It was a 2-track system, and we're all so shocked that it was divided by social status. If you're of the lower social status, but they did, and this is one of the things I think that made them a most excellent city, is they educated all their people, because educated people can produce and make more money. So here. And when we think of education, we think of college degrees. No, we're talking educated, and this is what was meant by that. This first track of the lower social status, and this included slaves. You could send your slaves in, because slaves who can read and write and do math are much more profitable, and that's what they taught you. Some of it would happen in your home, but usually not for this. They'd have to go somewhere. They would read, and they would learn how to write some basic letter writing and basic mathematics, so they could be more profitable, and it was offered. We see it as kind of a slight now, but back then it was considered moving and shaking. You're a moving and shaking society because you're educating your masses. Back in the day of Paul. So he's seen education is everybody's right. Everybody needs to know. And then if you are of the second track, which is the upper class, you actually had a grammar teacher that it was called the Grammaticus. That was the name of your class, or the name of your grammar teacher. There was the name of your grammar teacher, or the class, or both. It was the name of the teacher too. And it did the basic reading and writing. And when those things were mastered that were offered in track 1, they had the wonderful opportunity to read great works. I mean, they had their brain and were able to read great works of major classical authors like Homer and Euripides. Could you imagine having access? I am sure they never seen the originals, but having some of that. But they didn't just read them. They had to memorize them. You talk about giving your brain a workout, even as a young person, memorizing them. Because in the process of memorizing, what happens? You learn how to have an argument. You learn how to prove your point. You're the walking encyclopedia of all the information, so you can laugh and say, "I ain't true." And Euripides, blah, 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 and the scroll, blah, 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 he says this.
Well, and your memory becomes the resource, not the piece of paper.
Correct.
Because everybody didn't have the piece of paper.
Exactly.
They didn't have cell phones back then.
I know.
There's no Google.
That's what I was going to say. How did they fit that in during their screen time?
Especially because there's no electricity, so if they're doing it at night, they're reading with the candle. Here we go.
But they were thinkers. They could think.
Well, they were taught to think.
They were taught to think. Yes.
Critical thinking was part of this whole structure that they had to be able to think, because they had to be able to argue and win their point. That was definitely part of the Greek culture. You have to have that in you. It's so respected, okay? So after this, after they memorized all these authors, then they went to the gymnasium. And that isn't where they had physical activity, but they were under the guidance of actual philosophers and teachers of respect. And they taught them how to take out their education and be a good citizen, to be profitable to the society. You have to be able to help, not you succeed, our society to succeed. So Paul had access to this, and this structure would start at a younger age. I mean, by the time you were 12, you could be an intern in a business. So all of this happened very young. I'm guessing you would start somewhere like 4 or 5, depending on whatever, giving yourself the structure. And so he's learning, and that's just me making a guess. So did he receive this? You know, after we read his letters, I think he definitely received some of this because he's such a good arguer. He knows how to orate. He knows how to convince people. He knows how to set up an argument. He knows when to apologize. The whole process of having public conversations that are put down in letters, he knew the process. So I'm looking forward, as we go through this series, to go back to this. What was it like for him? What did he just naturally own by this time? Because he's somewhere between, let's say he's in his mid-20s when we start seeing him, or his early 20s. That's pretty young to own that so much authority that people just respect you. Because you're not using it for yourself. You're using it for, obviously you get some cred. So he also states, Paul says that Gamaliel, that he studied under this Jewish teacher, which is really, we don't understand what he's saying, but there would be a hush because only certain people and have access to. And so part of society, and when did he move into this? And he said, I think somewhere around 13 or so. So he had to be pretty young if he was educated in Tarsus, which I think was normal. But I think, my imagination, brilliant kid. So they knew, and they wanted him to study under Gamaliel. So they left Tarsus and they moved to Jerusalem so they could have access to Gamaliel. And he was a very famous teacher of the Jewish Sanhedrin. He was a teacher of the law. He was the one who advised the Sanhedrin to, here's this young Christian church, and he said, we should be moderate in our response. Don't get yourself all tied up in knots over it, because if Jesus is a false prophet, as we know there have been many, we've dealt with this over and over, the movement's going to fade into obscurity. It's going to disappear. It's going to be obscure. And if it is the work of God, then you have no blame in this situation. So can you imagine that being his teacher? And so it was good for Paul, because we knew he comes off as a firebrand a lot of it. And that's why Jesus sat on him on the road to Damascus. And so here, this is the individual that is finishing his education and rounding things up. Gamaliel was the son of Simon and the grandson of the famous Rabbi Hillel, and they came from the royal family of David, the lineage of the royal family of David. So Gamaliel had that as part of his cred as well. My ancestors go way back. I not only know how to train you, I'm not only intelligent, I'm not only the leader, because it's intriguing that he had this important position on the Jewish council that was held in respect according to Acts 5, but he also was the first person to bear the title Rabban instead of Rabbi. Rabbi means my master, my teacher, but Rabban means our master and our teacher. So who was this individual that Paul had this amazing opportunity to study with? I have no place to really put that except the awe of when you meet somebody you want to learn from, and they overwhelm you in such an amazing way, and they live their truth. That was this person. And they don't need to prove themselves, because their life has already proved it. They are just there. And I was so intrigued when I was reading about just those little snippets of his bio. The G guy, because Gamaliel is hard for my brain to say, especially because we record the show in the morning. It's not my favorite time of day. I'm only on teacup number 2.
And you wonder, too, if just being there was his little shoot into the authority that he had.
Yes.
You know, so that because
Most
he was
definitely.
this, it moved him into that. It's, you know, you want to go to this school because you can get there.
Yes. Well, and his standing in the Pharisees had to be really elevated
Yes.
because of his education and
Yeah.
and everything that he did. Like he said, he did, if this is what you wanted, I went up above and beyond.
Yeah.
I'm an above and beyond kind of guy.
Yeah.
So here he's being taught and trained by someone who seems to have a little bit of a different personality than him, but the same intensity for truth.
Yes.
And watching that, so that had to be an amazing connection. And I am guessing when he met him, he realized there's something here. This one is different. There's just something here about this guy that is different. And I would think that was part of God's design in Paul's world. He was designed with the personality that could handle this. He still had the choice. Nothing was forced upon him as far as what he did, but that personality was going to be needed, that bulldog kind of personality.
Well, and the Gamaliel that
Gamaliel.
he would
Say it again.
Gamaliel.
Gamaliel.
would say would have the authority, because he's talked about just that one little bit of you guys don't do this. You're going down. You're getting a little radical. Stop. Let's see what God does with it. It'll either die like the other things did, or it won't.
Yes.
And it's not like he yelled it or anything. He just spoke it, and it changed.
Yes.
So learning, even though with his personality, learning the authority of his words.
Yes.
You don't need to scream and yell and holler.
Yes, and understanding truth was his goal.
Right.
Because if he didn't have the truth, it drove him nuts.
Yes.
Because he knew that was, in all of his studies, in my estimation, even being a Pharisee, wanting to prove, because as a Pharisee, you had to have an income-producing job. You had to work, you had to be part of the working class, you had to be, so there's all these amazing things that were part of that structure as far as making sure that you've had the experience in order to speak to. And like every structure, when the wrong humans get in the powers of authority, things happen that shouldn't. But here, back to, what's his name, Pastor Michelle?
Gamaliel.
Yeah. He was a counselor to the Herods. He actually was called in when the Herods needed the leaders, the Jewish leaders of this territory, or quote-unquote Jewish. There is some argument about some of them for them to sit on the throne. So he was called in, and he was part of their council. So he wasn't only sought after by the middle class and the lower class. I'm really not sure how much of a middle class there was, but I would say the Pharisees would be the middle class. But then the upper class, the ruling class, also wanted his counsel. And when he died, it is listed that the glory of the law ceased and the purity and abstinence has died. Wow. This concept that it was just stated, life will never be the same now that, his name, Michelle?
Gamaliel.
Gamaliel, now that he has passed away. Life will never be the same. This you can't replace this person.
We lost something.
Paul had the opportunity to watch this whole thing go through. And it's interesting because Gamaliel, okay, it's going to be my undoing. No, it's just fine because those are not names I'm used to. That he actually succeeded to the patriarchate about the same time that Christ came forward as Messiah. So he was stepping into more and more authority as Christ was starting his public ministry. Yeah.
My touch point for him would be like hearing from Mother Teresa.
Yeah. Yep, that's I would say.
You know, if she were beside me and put her hand on my hand and said this, that would get my complete attention.
Yeah.
Because of who she is and the life that she lived. So that's really the only like person that I can connect I don't want to say reverence necessarily, but the respect and the weight that this person has earned because of the life that they have lived.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a really good connection. So here now we've talked about his home city and his education opportunities, which seem to be just amazing. And then he was also a Roman citizen, which I know people, want to be an American citizen. You know, people come here and do that. So is it like the same thing? Not even close. Because Rome is the ruling authority everywhere. Everywhere you go, they're the ruling authority. And you could be born into it, but if you weren't born, and we know that he's not a Gentile by any means, so how in the world did he get that? So they say several different ways. If you know the emperor, he can make you a citizen because he can do whatever he wants, all right? But not many of them got to know him, and if the emperor didn't like you, you would die. I mean, so you could do that. So who would want to be around that all the time? Talk about living on pins and needles. And so you could become a citizen of the Roman state, or you could become a citizen because you lived in you could apply for being a Roman citizen because you lived in this state or a particular city or a certain tribe. So your location did matter, where you lived, and then you could apply for citizenship. But more often than not, people who weren't born into it, they paid a lot of money. Because here in Acts 16, where Paul is being persecuted, he's in that phase of where his life is going to be, and he yells out, "They beat us publicly without a trial, even though we are Roman citizens." And oh boy, did everybody stop and everybody scramble, because you cannot do that to a Roman. Remember, Rome is in charge of all this territory, and if it comes back that these people are doing that to a Roman citizen, they're going to die. They're going to die. You don't follow the rules, or you don't follow my rules, I'm going to make sure that you don't do this again, so you're going to die. So they stop everything. They go get the magistrate. The magistrate comes and looks at Paul and said, "You're not Roman. How in the world, what are you? I paid a lot of money for mine." And Paul says, "Well, I was born into mine," which I'm sure he said very quietly, looking at the dude with blood all over him because he was in the process of being beat.
Yes.
So how in the world did he secure his Roman citizenship? Want to make sure we get that out there and enunciate carefully, all right? So looking at Rome and its influence. By the middle of the 1st century BC, the entire population of the Italian peninsula had been made Roman citizens. Anyone who lived there, you are Roman citizens. So in the middle of the 1st century AD, so in the 1st century BC, but then you go all the way down to the 1st century AD, and no, I did not do the math. I just realized they're far enough apart, but not that far. There was a sizable number of citizens throughout the empire. Throughout the whole empire, there was a lot of them that were already Roman citizens because the empire was growing and people were moving out. And in 212, an edict was issued that made all free inhabitants of the empire citizens. So if you're not a slave and you live all here, all of you can become a citizen. So there's a way for expansion, and there was all of these protections, as we hear in the story in Acts 22. If you're a Roman citizen, how people have to treat you, how they have to respect you, how they can't do, and they have to bring you to court. I mean, this had to be amazing to have. It gives you power as an individual that you didn't have before unless you had a lot of money. So here you can be part of the working class. You can be part of this. If you have Roman citizenship, you can have expectations of protection and being watched over. So they are thinking that it could be given to slaves who were freed, that were manumitted. They are set free. They could become a citizen. It could be given to someone who has a valuable service that they've done for the empire or for the emperor, either in the military or otherwise. It could be purchased for a large sum of money, and it can be inherited from the father's side of your clan. If they were a citizen, you inherit it. So once again, if you were a slave that was set free, you could apply for it. If you do this valuable service, it is given to you. Or if you got lots of money, or if you inherit it. So they're thinking that Paul definitely inherited it, but how did Paul's family become? They're thinking it's probably going back to his grandfather, because when Paul says he's a tent maker, we think, oh, isn't that nice? I'm glad you have a useful thing, a useful skill, because as a Pharisee, you had to have a useful skill. And isn't that really nice that you can do that? But I don't think we understand what was stated, because he does it, but I think his father and his grandfather, they're thinking that it was more of a craftsman, that they did the canvas things. They made tents, but then they also made sails, and they did ornate work inside of theaters, and because Rome is growing and they need artists. So he's thinking that Paul came from a line of artists that were able to take that trade and turn it up as the city grew, and as the opportunity grew, they grew with it. And if it was the grandfather doing that for who was ever emperor or the leader of Rome at the time, they gave him citizenship. They think it somehow worked that way, because that would fit in with what the culture he was living in at the time, and then that would be how he became a citizen. It wasn't bought. It was earned by his ancestors. And so very precious to him growing up and having that swag, but he didn't realize it was going to be a thing that kept his life elongated so he could finish the mission that Christ gave him. And with that in our minds, we're going to take a moment for a station break, and when we come back, we're going to continue our conversation talking about his occupation and Paul's religious background.
Such great discussion and content makes you want to dig in even more to the Word. We'll get right back to it shortly. In the meantime, here's more information about the church and where to find this show and many others like it.
Maranatha has campuses in Forest Lake, Minnesota, and Chisago Lakes, Minnesota. We have been serving our communities for decades, well over 40 years of loving God and loving people. Enjoy what you're hearing here? Visit yourliferadio.com for links to our other radio shows.
We would love to have you join us at one of our Maranatha campuses. Visit yourliferadio.com for links to both of our campuses for more detailed information. Now, back to chew on this.
So, if you were living in a Roman province, if you were there, what would be the difference? Just let's play a game of imagination here. Whether or not you were a citizen or not. Let's say you're living in a Roman protected territory and you are not a citizen. What is your everyday life like? Where would you go? Let's say you were living in the city and you had a business of some sort, so you would use that money to buy other things in the city. What would it be like? People would see you.
You'd always have to be, since you didn't have citizenship, I would think you would always have to be, there would be a measure of vulnerability because you didn't have those protections that others could lean into. Really, pretty much anything can happen to you. And
extorted for more money, prices go up when they see your face.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Not safe at all because you had no protection.
Yeah.
Yep, none.
We think we have civil discord, or we think we have a bad civil structure. And it is crazy. Even when you go back and listen to American history, the whole protection system of the individual voice, we have a voice that will be heard. That is unheard of.
Right.
So Rome was trying to do that, but it was only available to the citizens of Rome. And if you weren't a citizen, then you didn't have that protection. So it is weird to think that you had to earn it, because we don't do that too much. Not being political here, but it is a conversation. And it's been a conversation from one man organized himself. Who has the authority and how do you get it and how do you get to be part of that? So if you were a Roman citizen and you lived in that city, nobody is going to try and steal from you because you can take them to court because you're both Roman citizens. If you were the owner of the store and people came in and didn't want to pay what you were pricing, the price you were, and they were a Roman citizen, I mean, would you barter with them in a different way than if they weren't? I mean, if they're your friend, that's one thing, but if they're not, so that stamp that Paul got used to and grew up in, it was always there. I'm important. I'm important. That this is important. Civil structure creates and infects and affects everything that you do. So understanding that it's there. So he had not only all this education and all this learning and this training from where he lived, but also from his heritage, his beautiful heritage. He also then had just the timing of living in two different places that had Roman rule and authority showing in two different ways. In Jerusalem, it was different. It was almost like a state of being under rule, political rule, not military rule. It was like, and it was pretty much occupied territory. But when in Tarsus, it was this Greek freedom, and he didn't understand until he got old enough to realize being a Roman citizen gave him an awful lot of privileges. Access to all kinds of training and all kinds of things. So this is forming him in his understanding of what worlds can look like. I can have this and I can have this. And it's interesting because when he gets laid out by Jesus right before he gets into Damascus and all the things start changing, he is now moving from this affluent authority that is respected by the people that are in authority. He is now moving to the other side. Even though he is a Roman citizen, he's now going to start living more. And do you think anywhere in his cognitive resources he realized that? When do you think that hit him? I don't have that life anymore. Because it had to hit him somewhere. I don't think it hit him right when he was laid out and his eyes got covered with things. He was blind when he got up off the road, and he had to be led into town. And it was crazy because he was not at all in charge.
For the first time, probably ever.
Yes, yes, yeah, that's
Probably
true.
for the
If
first
he was
time ever.
Yeah, precocious child, yes. Yes, and it's smart. You just kind of give them the leeway to play on the computer and to learn things because
Yes.
they're going to learn faster than you can teach them. Yeah.
And a different way to navigate. I mean, my mind immediately goes to the both of you have been on missions trips in different countries where the protections and the things that you receive here in America are different than the country that you were in, and being coached on how to have your needs met or to have your safety cared for and all that other. It was cared for. It was certainly cared for differently in those different cultures, but learning how, and that's how I see Paul. It's like he got to walk between worlds. What a brilliant God choice.
Yes, right. Mic drop, that type of thing. What he was bringing and what.
Well, and that it happened probably a couple generations back. That's the thing that I'm like, the grandfather.
See?
Setting it up for what's coming.
Yeah.
It's, trusting God in the sovereignty of that, of like, because he had that, he could do the things that he could do in a different way that somebody else could not have
So now
done.
this brings me a question. Do you see God doing that in your life? Have you seen that in your life, where there's some things that have been in your past and you wonder, how did that get there? Because it sure is helping today.
My mind's kind of scrambled eggs with it right now, honestly. Yeah.
Of where, because what it's done is it's good or negative things that have happened in my world. I can lean into that, trusting him today, because I've seen how the things that were in the past have worked out in my present and future.
His hand of protection. How about you, Jim?
Well, yeah, I certainly do. I wouldn't be here today. I would never have walked into Maranatha without my wife, Jennifer. And we both met we met at a Tesla concert. It was going to be a one-night stand, and it developed into all of this and led us here. So, things happen.
Yeah.
Change.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Looking at my father, who was very duty, both my parents were very duty-oriented. My dad grew up in abject poverty. My mom grew up a little bit more on the not enough money, big, large family side. And his commitment to duty you work whatever. You work the job, you get a better job. You have kids, you get another job. And I remember many times at Christmas Eve, we would be waiting because he would be out. He worked for the MnDOT, and he would get home when the snow was done. And just, of course, we wait. Work is important. So that this whole, work is important, and the concept of duty, and then watching my dad step and being on the town board, and I mean, these are just things that were normal to us, that you do, you work for the structure to create a safe place for your people. And I am very much introvert, and I definitely need to be alone to rest and get my brain back together and all of this. But just watching my parents and watching them do that, and it wasn't a question of do you. It's a question of yes, you do, and you do what you can. And then watching that influence me as I fall in love with Jesus. And my mom met Jesus first, and then my dad wasn't quite sure of you're saying all the stuff we grew up and provided with our kids is worthless, and you're telling me now. I was like, no, Woody. It's what got us here. We know that this is true, and now this is how you can live it. And it was amazing because my dad met the Rev, this cowboy pastor guy. He was just a great guy. And the church that they went to, and it took that human being to help my dad understand, I've been living and going this direction for so long. And now me finding my call into the ministry at a rather young age, and just letting it perk. They're not saying anything, not even to my parents, because, I'm a whole whopping 15 years old and whatever, and hearing the Holy Spirit ask me, will you give your life to me in ministry? It's like, okay. And go on, finish baking the food I was baking. But living in that household, watching that sense of duty has really helped a lot in ministry. It helped a lot in parenting, but it helps a lot in ministry. And I'm just very grateful that God's seen to format me with that. So when I read stuff like this and go back in people's history, looking at how the things, they takes this and takes this for this to happen. And it doesn't all have to be, oh, this good thing and this was a good thing. No, there's some bad things that was in Paul's past, but God used them to go here. Or some things that were not so healthy, not necessarily bad, but they were things you're going to want to reproduce in your children, right? And those things giving you the skills that you are needed, or the heart of compassion, or the understanding of. And he uses whatever. He takes that, and he is the only master of that. That only happens in the presence of Jesus Christ, taking and making it new. He takes anything that was, quote unquote, cancerous to us, and he takes and makes it new. And I'm not saying that he heals everybody of everything, because that is silly.
Yes.
Because this is not heaven.
Yes.
We do ask for it, and we trust in his authority for it. And then we walk in love and live this life, because heaven is coming.
Yes.
It is not this.
That's right.
Well, I think, go ahead, you were going to say something.
I think about the tool belt, for lack of a better word, that the Lord and life and history had put these variety of tools in Paul's tool belt. And as he matured and as he gained more experience, but the wisdom of the Holy Spirit of what tool to pull out in what group of people. What bridge do I walk over? How do I work in love with you? Do I bring like the naughty Corinthians? And do I, because everything he did, even though it was forceful, it was love. And so, but that was the love that they needed. And just watching the wisdom of the Holy Spirit navigate the variety of tools that are in Paul's tool belt. Because that's where I'm just having my moment as we go through this, learning more with Paul of all of the platforms that the Lord, in this one particular person, he could bridge places I don't know anybody else could.
Well, and the fact that he was the one who was going after the Jews, after the Christians, and killing them or being a part of what was happening, when he and the disciples, it is phenomenal to me that he's the one who was responsible for the disciples' friends being killed.
Yes.
And then had the relationship that he had. So when he speaks about forgiveness, he's not speaking about it as a ethereal concept. It is personal between him and Peter.
Yes.
That when he says this can be done, we can go, yep, it can be done. Because it was done, and you walked that out. So the things that he talks about are not just theories to him; they're life. And this, if you want a healthy life, maybe not a comfortable life, but a healthy life, this is the way to walk.
Yes.
And I have walked it.
Yeah.
And that's where his authority comes from. Jesus gave it to him, and then he walked it.
Going back to when you talked about Mother Teresa, her life was her voice.
Right.
You couldn't argue. You can't argue with truth.
Exactly.
Truth lived out like that. Yes. So Paul had to have some of that, but probably not the same personality as Mother Teresa. Just saying. Yeah.
Well, you wonder what she really. The things that she did.
I'm reading her now, and she's but and that was the thing that
power under authority.
Yes.
Exactly. And Paul's love of truth. And yet his interaction with love, capital L love.
Yes.
And the integration of both of those things for the course of his life.
Yep. Yeah.
I'm trying to think where I want to go here with different pieces of conversation, because Paul's occupation and his early Christian social status, we've talked a bit about that already, that the tent maker, that they were skilled and above the social level of the general populace, that they were respected, that they were, I would say, in the upper middle class is probably what he grew up in. It's interesting to note that there are some notes in the actual information that I got where they talk about the social economical class, that at the very small percentage of wealthy people sit at the top, and they make decisions and they move things. And then the largest group of the poor, many without enough to provide for daily living, are at the bottom. And in between, the middle class, which I do believe, if I remember my studies correctly, that societies that don't have that middle class don't grow. That the middle class is that flux, it's the gas and the energy. That Paul grew up in, that was part of that. And I don't know how much, they're wondering how much that structure came and turned into the church structure.
Yeah.
Those at the top who had what was considered valuable It wasn't dollar money. It was education. Well, the apostles, they lived with Jesus. And then Paul encountered Jesus as a supernatural self. After that, nobody else. They are the separate. And so what they've said and who they are, that is why everything that's written in Scripture had to come through an apostle. They didn't have to write it, because the book of Mark is written by Mark, but it's the words of
Peter.
Is it Peter?
Yeah. So when you start realizing the connections there, that they're thinking that even just his experience of living in the structure, there's this natural step. Well, this is how this is going to work. You actually start formatting into it without even having any kind of cognitive ability that you're doing it. And that's where training comes in. You train enough, you automatically do it. Yes. And so they're thinking that even the structure of how even the church today has followed the structure, that's where it came from his upbringing. It just kind of oozed out of him, and he set up, like when he's setting up the church in Corinth.
Right. Yeah.
This is how this is going to look. And it isn't the ones with money. I mean, that huge issue there that they would not get rid of that horribly wicked family because they were so wealthy, because they're considered leaders in society. You can't kick them out of church.
Right.
He's like, want to bet?
Right. Well, and all of the work he goes through because he's creating Christian culture.
Yes.
And we get to live in that today. Which I think in the modern church, ours as an example, and how much we support and live in, and what is healthy Christian culture, because we're taking our lead from the very genesis of what Paul has talked about in the creation of these churches there. We're still doing it. Exactly.
And live this way. And this is how you have healthy relationship, healthy community.
Well, as we continue to say, all of Scripture, but specifically in the New Testament, it's all about community. If you are not connected in a believing community, that is your first step. You find one that works for you, that respects you, that doesn't tell you this is the way it is, and if you don't do this, you don't have enough faith, or you're whatever. It's like no. You grow together. There's lots and lots of open-ended conversations, and there's nothing to be embarrassed over, because we all have our baggage.
Right.
Look at Paul. Jesus took that load of baggage, and so we all get to share and deal with it together. Yes.
And that's why you can't go, oh, well, my sin is too big. Well, look at Paul. Look at Paul, really.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's what I mean, the tool belt.
Exactly.
Could you have picked someone that, I mean, if somebody was going to experience it, man, oh man, he's got it in almost every direction. I mean, Paul wasn't a woman, so maybe he didn't understand that part of it. But he had people, he had females in the ministry that he did, that he supported and he was connected with. And
he put females into leadership. And I know, okay, wait a minute. Siren's going off. But surprise, do a little study. Study Junia and see exactly what that means to you. But anyway, going to back to our original conversation, looking at his religious background, we've touched this, but looking at Paul, we already read Philippians 3:5-6, where he talked about, hey, if you think you can out-Jew me, you can't, because I'm a Jew for Jew. And I love that he's so proud. I mean, this is important, and it is. And such respect, but he goes through this, that, the circumcision on the 8th day, the tribe of Benjamin, Hebrew of Hebrews, in regard to the law, the Pharisee. And I've got all this zeal persecuting the church. I did that. I was faultless. It's interesting to note that as he's coming back into Jerusalem, and he's meeting other Jews that they left Jerusalem at the beginning of the persecution. They lived in different areas in the Gentile Greek-speaking world. They had children. Those children spoke Greek. That they would come back and be in synagogue. They would need interpreters because they didn't speak Greek. But here, Paul spoke all these languages. He was able to speak in Hebrew. He knew Aramaic. He knew Greek. And that in and of itself, you're now in leadership. I mean, so his religious background also helped him in the calling on his life of what God, because God is sending him to where all these places where they don't speak Hebrew. So some Aramaic, but they all speak Greek. But Greek was, at that time, the Romans kept up with that the Greek language was the English of the day. So he identifies with the Aramaic speaking branch of the Jewish people because he grew up that way, and they would accept him because he didn't have an accent. He could just speak like them. And I mean, it is true. I don't care who you are, but when the accent comes in, they listen more carefully.
Yeah.
You try to enunciate words, you talk slower, that type of thing. They didn't have to do that. So there is this, you are not different than me. These little things that keep showing up in Paul's life. All of these crazy, weird experiences that somewhere in his alone time, he had a thing, have this conversation with God. Well, this was there, and that made this door open. This was there, and that made this door open. This was there, and that made this door open. So I have to ask myself, when we look at our past, and we don't have to be really proud of some things, or we are really proud of some things, that as I wonder, I know God redeems and uses all of us for the things because he sees how all of this structure works and what influences human beings. And sometimes you will meet a human being he is specifically putting in your world so you can influence them. So Paul, not being a Greek Jew or a diaspora-born child, that because he wasn't, maybe he was born in Tarsus, but he doesn't have that accent. He has the ability to, so was he that intelligent, or was he born there? I'm assuming he grew up with Aramaic being spoken in his house. But they had cred in Jerusalem. So even if you disagreed with him, you're going to listen to him because he can speak like you. So he had a foot in the door as far as being a Pharisee, but then being one who actually had the right accent. So let's see, I'm trying to see. Guess what? We have information still. So in Galatians 1:13 and 14, I'm going to read this, and then I'm going to meet Paul of Tarsus, and we're going to come up with some descriptive words at this point that will guide us through the rest of this series, which may take the rest of 2026. I don't know, because we don't go fast. And because we're going to be going through some really intriguing letters of love that Paul was, Colossians and Ephesians and Philippians, writing to healthy congregations, and how he's helping them and making sure they stay healthy and that they stay a really good community. It could take us a while. But in Galatians 13 through 14, it says this: "For you have heard of my previous way of life in Judaism, how intensely I persecuted the church of God and tried to destroy it." Verse 14, "I was advancing in Judaism beyond many of my own age among my people and was extremely zealous for the traditions of my fathers." So this idea of being extremely zealous, this beautiful phrase, we know that about him, that he is designed. So I wonder if John the Baptist was prophesied and brought in that way. Paul is not like John the Baptist. I'm not saying that. But there is an interesting thing about John the Baptist personality that was needed to be the precursor to the Messiah.
Yes.
I'm going out on the limb here saying after the Messiah went to heaven, the next person was going to be the limb that would take Jesus to the Gentiles, and that would be Paul. That I have to wonder how much was orchestrated, and he could grow up however he was going to grow up and make his choices, and the Holy Spirit's going to intervene. And it's like, yep, we're going to do this. And Paul had every right to say no, and God would have moved on. But Paul, he knew, and this, he calls himself extremely zealous.
Well, and you're going back to, just the thought, you're going back to that he was Roman. He could go all over the Gentile thing because he could be safe.
Yes.
He could travel anywhere he wanted to because he was a Roman citizen.
He was his own Roman road.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, ha.
Everywhere he went, yes. He could do that and stay safe.
Right.
Because of who he was.
And the other thing, too, is like Peter was a light to the Jews, Paul was a light to the darkness of the Gentiles,
Yes.
which means he was also the point of the spear. So you expect the point of the spear to be sharp, to be able to cut through that, to be tenacious, to stand against all of the evil that was going to challenge and be a force against your changing the status quo, because he had a huge status quo to change for Jesus.
Yes. So you have the word tenacious. We have extremely zealous. What else did you say?
He was just safe. He could be
Safe.
protected.
Yes.
Yep.
That he could walk in safety. Jim,
Yep.
do you have any descriptive words for Paul that pop around in your head as we've talked this through? Besides being crazy?
Well, forgive me, ballsy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. He had it in spades.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that an inappropriate statement?
Just
I don't know.
no
He had
fear.
it above and beyond. Yes.
No fear.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yes, he was. And part of that, I mean, in the culture that he lived within, made it easy to follow because he was fair and he embraced truth. We know that he was very courageous. He was a conflict eater. He had conflict for breakfast, and it infused him with energy. And it didn't. He was very quick-witted. He was pushy. He was very resourceful, and he was unbelievably intelligent. So we are going to take this brother of our faith, and we're going to, now that we're getting to know his personality, we're going to take that, and as we read the letters that he wrote for the first time he was in prison, how did prison affect those letters? How did his personality affect those letters? And how is it affecting us? Because it doesn't do any good to read the scripture without being able to apply it into our life. Looking forward to talking to you in episode 2.
Thank you for listening to part 2 of this week's episode of Chew on This. Please join us for another new episode next Monday and Tuesday at noon on this station, WAJC. We have a great archive of past series and resources at yourliferadio.com. Select Chew on This and click on the information icon. We invite you to join us live each Wednesday night at our Forest Lake campus at 6:30 p.m. Original music, In My Father's Hand, was written and performed by Ron Carlson. A parting thought. As we are all learning to put missional living into practice, let's remember today, wherever we find ourselves, let's love God and love people. See you for the next Chew on This episode. The opinions expressed here are not necessarily those of the owner.